and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. We finally got a break from the, I don't know what it was, 22 billion degrees below zero over the weekend. Actually, it really wasn't that cold. But does it surprise anybody that when the news media says, well, we have the storm of the century, that what you can expect is something pretty normal for Wyoming? Does that surprise you at all, Ken?
Nope. Every year about this time, though, you start thinking about February 2nd, Groundhog Day and whatnot, and the seed catalogs start showing up.
We shall say Nick again to you if you do not appease us.
Well, what is it you want?
We want a shrubbery.
A what? Please, no.
I love that movie. It never gets old.
So this year we have to add some new roses. We have a rose garden out front, and we started out with several exotic ones, and they didn't survive very well. And so we've learned a little bit about how to take better care of them. For one thing, buy them at Kmart because the cheap crap lasts a lot better. But we're going to add some new ones this year. So we're going to go down there to Cheyenne. We'll endure that for a couple of months and come back and impatiently wait for time to begin to till the earth once more.
Well, I don't know why you're going to be there a couple of months. I won't be. About a month is all I can handle this year. That's true. The legislative session starts on the 9th. That's the state of lying in Wyoming. Excuse me, that's the governor's address is on February 9th.
It already started for me. It started in December. We had 2 weeks of hearings in December, 2 weeks of hearings in January. I've got meetings tonight, meetings tomorrow night.
I seem to recall somebody saying, I think I might want to be on appropriations. And then somebody else, perhaps a good close friend of his, saying, are you sure you want to do that?
Be careful what you wish for, you ignorant fool. Somebody said the other day, and I don't remember who it was, but was originally his line, but Dave Kinski repeated it, and I think it's accurate. He says, the legislature is the most expensive hobby you'll ever love.
Yes, it's pretty expensive. Well, anyway, it starts on the 9th. Can't wait. Actually, it's going to be, I think it's going to be kind of a fun time because the open range record is, we're going to start doing a lot of stuff when the session starts. We'll have our nightly news broadcast, which we are calling the Roundup, and we'll broadcast that. I'm thinking like 4 nights a week, maybe 5. I don't know. I mean, we'll find it out, see how it goes. No, Ken, it won't be just 2, which, by the way, you're probably going to make an appearance on there more than a few times. So
I hope it pays better than this gig.
No, it pays about the same, really.
Okay.
And actually, well, no, that's not true because it's going to be an outlet where you can actually explain what it is that you're doing down there. And the whole idea is just to say, here's what happened during the day.
Yeah.
And, we'll have a couple guests on, and we'll talk about a couple bills.
And you've set yourself up in a rented house about a block away from the Capitol, which is nice and convenient.
Yeah, it's real close. Well, I don't even know if it's a block and a half. I think it's...
Yeah. You'll know when it's about 10 degrees and 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah,
And you're
well,
walking
that
over to the
always
Capitol.
happens. Well, at least it's not all the way across town. But anyway, real close to the Capitol. It'll be a lot of fun, and we've got lots and lots of plans. Well, and I think we're going to begin this morning with a piece on the open range record. We haven't had a chance to talk about this, but we should entitle this whole part, Why does the truth matter? Well, the truth is, if we disregard the truth, we're not able to communicate. The only way that communication happens is if we have some sort of agreement on whatever it is that we're talking about. And there is a guy over in Niobrara County who's trying his darndest to convince a whole bunch of folks, the entire state, of something that's not true. And so I wrote this piece on the Open Range Record. It's called Manipulating Truth, How an Amateur Tried to Deceive Wyoming. And so essentially the long and the short of it is, and then we'll get into the particulars, but he selectively edited a video of Agent 29 in the appropriations meeting to make it seem like Ken said, well, I don't want any businesses in Wyoming. In fact, let me play this for you. Oh, maybe I better turn on the volume.
I don't want a bunch of businesses coming to this state.
Okay, there it is. That's the extent of that video. And that's not what Ken
Then
said.
I turned into a nun?
Yes, and then you turned into a nun.
That's
We're going to
cool.
talk about this later on in the program, too. There's a lot of AI slop going on. But so first, Ken, I know that you sent me a statement on this whole thing. Let's just get off the cuff. Talk to me about this.
Well, I think this.
See, I think that just makes noises to
Yeah,
talk about how your bones feel in
it's
the
just
morning.
trying to get attention. Basically, my comment to you was something along the lines of, I'm perfectly willing to discuss, as I did for hours yesterday, the issues politely with somebody.
Yeah.
But you start swearing at me and calling me obscene names. We've seen that. You start manipulating the truth, as you put it.
Yep.
And all bets are off. I'm done. It's pointless.
Well, and I think that it speaks to the position of these redcoats. When you don't have any legitimate arguments, or you're not creative enough to have any legitimate arguments, or you're not intelligent enough to come up with an original thought, which I think this might be this J.D. Wasserberger fellow, then you have to lie. And that is exactly what he did.
By the way, J.D. Wasserberger is the uncle of
Jacob
Representative
Yes.
Wasserberger. He's a good guy.
Yeah, I like
he
Jacob
votes
a lot.
with us most of the time. He's got kind of what I think is a little bit of a wild idea, but that's not the topic right now. But that's fine. We all kind of dive off the deep end now and then on some pet project. But I don't want any confusion that
See, and that was another interesting part of this story. And I think that this goes to exactly what I wanted to talk about. That we have to have a conversation centered around facts and the truth. And because if we don't, I mean, there's no basis to have a conversation. So I published first the episode on the podcast about this guy. And then I published the article a little bit later. Well, immediately on social media, there was this blub. Oh, well, David, you've got it wrong. This is J.D. Williams. Well, okay. So first, no, it doesn't have anything to do with Representative Williams. All of those comments came from people that either didn't listen to the episode or they didn't read the article. And I think that this speaks to a larger point that we don't read for content. A lot of people just look at the headline and say, oh, yep, that's what it's about. And then they just assume. And you know what it means to assume. It means to make an ass out of you and me, which is what happened. There were a couple of people that I talked to over the weekend and said, hey, you you stop this. You've got it wrong. Like I'm right on this one. His name is J.D. Wasserberger. Well, anyway, on the open range record, you can go watch the videos. The edited one is there, as well as the committee meeting. And then the text messages that Mr. Wasserberger sent me, which are pretty entertaining, it kind of reveal that, in fact, he is the one that sent these out.
I think it's worth mentioning at this juncture that what he put up there said, it was me speaking, I said, I don't want a bunch of businesses coming to Wyoming, and then he cuts it.
Yeah.
And what I went on to say was, and looking for a handout.
Yes.
But cut that part out, so.
Yeah, well, we can play. It'll take me a little bit to get to it.
Yeah, that's okay. I've heard it.
Well, you've heard it, but our audience hasn't. So let's go ahead and do it. It'll take me a little bit to get to it, but you just hold on just a second, and I will be pretty close to it.
Legislative committees are all divided.
Okay, so what's happening in the committee is Ken is talking to Randall Luthi. Randall Luthi is one of the governor's advisors. He's a policy advisor, and they're going back and forth.
Former Speaker of the House.
Former Speaker of the House. He was in the legislature for quite a long time. Anyway, so he and Ken are going back and forth about this, about the Wyoming Business Council. And though you can't hear him say it in this little section I'm going to play for you, this is where he says, well, it's just nuts to cut the Wyoming Business Council. This is where it comes from. So it's on January 15th, and the video, well, the pertinent part starts at 1 hour, 18 minutes-ish. So I'm going to play the long version of it so you can hear everything in context. We'll play it, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Divided among 9 policy advisors. At the time, that was the person who also worked with the Business Council and worked with them closely on the broadband issues. It wasn't that we had our own person doing our own thing. It's just that the broadband was assigned to that person and then worked with generally the Business Council to see that the federal grants, if they were available, that they were applied for, and help them meet the requirements of those.
Thank you.
Representative Pendergrass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome back. It is always good to see you, even though we seldom quite see each other eye to eye. And thank you for being here. So I just had to throw this out there. Randall Luthi is not a tall man.
Little guy.
So when I said we seldom see each other eye to eye, he knew what I was talking about. But there's more than that. His corner is in the basement of the Capitol. And I walk by it early in the morning, usually before daylight, on my way into the Capitol. And he sits in his office. And every morning we wave at each other. And anyway, I just throw that in there. So it's not like we are adversarial, can't stand to see each other, won't talk to each other.
Just a little double entendre.
Yeah, and this is part of what I'm talking about. He and I can have an honest back and forth on the issues. And he's not going to represent what I say. I'm not going to misrepresent what he says. Well,
and Ken, this is why context is so important. And it's the reason why I played like this whole exchange on the podcast, and I made sure the entire video was available on the open range record, is so you can see what's happening, and that it is not, how your relationship or even how the conversation was portrayed. That what actually happened is very, very different. So let's go ahead and continue.
Well, I wanted to respond briefly to a couple of the things that I heard, and one of them was, this doesn't look good for the public. I beg to differ. I think how this looks to the public depends a lot upon the circles that we run in and our own sphere of influence. And the longer we serve in a place like this, the more our sphere of influence tends to be
Now, I want you to listen very carefully to what Ken is saying here, because he's saying that the longer you're in the legislature, the more the people that you interact with tend to be those folks in the legislature, and it becomes a big echo chamber. Now, the most important part of what Ken says is right after the segment in question. We'll continue, and then I'll stop it right where we need to.
altered. if you go back and you look through my emails and my phone messages, and yes, there are some people out there that think I'm lowest form of life on earth. That's part of politics. But there are a lot of people out there, a lot, who are sending encouragement or offering, finally, we're starting to move in another direction. I heard, I do not, I want to back up just a second. I was just talking about this idea of it doesn't look good for the public. My job is not to look good. My job is to do what I believe is right and what the people who rallied together behind me to elect me and send me here, what they think is right. And ultimately, one side will win out. And I'm fine with that. What message does this send to, I've heard a lot of talk about that. What message got Ogden's attention? That was his line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they always say. What message does this send to the people of Wyoming? All right. So the piece in question is just about to be played here. So let's listen to it, and then I'll try to stop it.
Are we sending abroad? The message that I think we're sending is, here is a place where you can come and do business on a level playing field with a minimal government meddling. A lot of the things that Representative Sherwood asked about are, what about this program? What about this program? How is this going to be maintained? How is this going to be maintained? The concept, the underlying idea behind this is to get government out of the way and allow businesses to find their own way and to work for themselves, to survive on their own. There are many who would suggest, well, they can't do that. If we take away all of these benefits and all these other forms of assistance or whatever you want to label you want to put on it, that a business just simply couldn't survive or they'd go elsewhere. I don't want a bunch of businesses coming to this state.
Okay. So we're just going to stop it right there for a second. Now, kind of an unfortunate pause there, Ken. I mean, and it's just your pattern of speech. It's just how you speak. You tend to.
It's also, there was a way that I wanted to phrase it, and I figured that probably would put me on the front page of every newspaper. And so I had to think, how should I rephrase this?
Yeah. All right. So that's the section that you just heard that was put out in that video. Here's the rest of what Ken says.
That are here for the handouts. I'd rather somebody come in that just says, leave me alone.
Okay. So you heard the difference, right? He says, I don't want a bunch of people coming to this state. And then the rest of it is that are here for all the handouts. And, you know, this is why it is so important that we play things in context. And, you know, people like J.D. Wasserberger, unscrupulous people that, you know, they'll take anything out of context and try to make it seem something that it isn't. And it's a straight up lie. Now, here's the truth. I don't know if for a fact if it was J.D. Wasserberger that actually edited this video. But I do know for a fact that it was J.D. Wasserberger that sent it out. And we've got a story coming on Mr. Wasserberger that there's a good reason why he isn't very happy with Agent 29. And it all revolves around your tax dollars. So I want to end this by playing just the one more section of what Ken says, because I think this is by far the most important thing that you said in that entire segment. So here you go. Listen close.
I would encourage each of us to reach beyond our sphere of influence, to try to put an ear into other groups and hear what the other side is saying. When I come here, I hear what the other side is saying all the time. I go back home, I get around the people that rallied, like I said, to send me here. I hear an entirely different message. And that's what this purpose is for. Agree with one side or the other side. The purpose is for different concepts, different ideas to come head to head and butt to each other, and may the best ideas win.
Now, Ken, you're not suggesting that that we should talk to other people that disagree with us, are you?
I never do that.
No, that would never happen. But that's exactly what Ken said, is that everybody needs to reach outside of their own little echo chamber and talk to people that they disagree with, that you disagree with. Because I got news for you. Most people are not right all the time, and most people are not wrong all the time. And often when you talk to people that you disagree with, they have a different perspective than you do, and you may find that maybe they have some ideas that you haven't thought of. I mean, that could possibly be.
Nah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the main story on the open range record right now. I think it's incredibly important. As it turns out, well, we've got a follow-up coming on that one. Still putting the pieces together on it, so be looking for that. And I mean, it's just amazing to me, Ken, that we are where we're at. That sometimes I often wonder, does the truth even matter? Being in the media, you see all sorts of stuff. I mean, distortions and opinion wrapped up as news. But I think the reaction to this whole incident, to this article, to the podcast, I think it shows you that the truth does matter. And people get really angry when there's somebody that's bald-faced lying about something, which is what happened to you. And I'm sorry that happened to you, Ken, but I'm fully capable of swinging the bat.
I'm not the first who has been unjustly prosecuted.
No.
I remember a story about Jesus standing before Pilate, and theoretically, Pilate is supposed to be trying to get to the truth. But in the discussion, Pilate says, "What is truth?"
Yeah. Yeah, and he says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes before the Father except through me." So anyway, that's a big story. I encourage you to go look it out, check it out. All of the documentation is there, including the phone call I recorded with Mr. J.D. Wasserberger. And when questioned about this whole thing, you know what he said? Well, that's just how politics works. No, it's not. That's the worst kind of politics.
But he didn't learn from his mistake, hence round 2. So let's buy another barrel of ink.
I think so. That's a great quotation. And, doing some research on that one, nobody really knows who said it. Everybody thinks that it was Mark Twain, but there's no definitive proof that he actually said that. But the actual quotation is, I never pick a fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrel, or electrons, as it were. So coming up in a few minutes, we're going to talk to Dr. Jenna Robinson, and she is with the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal, and they've written a number of pieces about the University of Wyoming, one of which I published on the Open Range Record that talks about how the university didn't do away with all of their DEI classes. In fact, they just kind of hid them. And, Ken, you and I talked about that on the program. I guess it was last week. Well, it would have had to have been last week because that's the first time you were back. But there is a lot of stuff in the media how you Ken, personally are destroying the University of Wyoming, and that you're just cutting them to the bone, and they're going to have to lay off at least 500 people, maybe 600. I mean, it's really up in the air. It may go as high as 700.
Yeah, the $40 million out of their block grant represents about 2.5% of their total income.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a minuscule, I guess minuscule is the wrong word, but really, I mean, it is a budget cut that any budget, I don't care where it is, who it's from, any budget can sustain a 10% cut.
What it hurts, and I had a similar discussion yesterday here in Sheridan at City Hall. Most of any budget is obligatory. You take your household income, you have to make the mortgage payment, you have to buy groceries, you have to pay the utilities, et cetera, et cetera. You don't really have any choice. So you have a small piece of pie out of your gross income that is discretionary. And so when you take a hit like we took in property taxes over the last few years, that's where it hurts you, is in that discretionary income. Well, same thing for these agencies, same thing for the University of Wyoming. They're squalling because it's going to start disallowing them to do some of the discretionary things that they would rather do.
Well, and let's just talk about one of those items that you cut for the athletics program. what was it, $6 million for UW athletics?
Yeah, University of Wyoming and the NCAA have a partnership agreement. When the NCAA got sued over name, image, and likeness, and they lost that lawsuit and had to start making payouts to athletes. So that ended up, NCAA comes back to the University of Wyoming, whom, they had an agreement with UW. State really had no part of that. And that went south, and they said, we can't send you any more money, UW. And UW, instead of sucking it up on their own, turns around to the state and says, well, the taxpayers got to make up the difference.
Right.
So they're asking us for $6 million to make up what they're not getting from the NCAA over that lawsuit.
Which is ridiculous. First, UW athletics they can afford to fund themselves. The Cowboy Joe Club, they bring in a tremendous amount of money from, ticket sales and jersey sales and, all sorts of paraphernalia. And there's no reason why they should be receiving $6 million from you and me. And the worst part of it, it's to cover them being able to make money off of name, image, and likeness. And think about this, Ken. So they're asking the state to reimburse the university for the $6 million that they have to pay out because they used somebody else's face to make money on UW athletics. So really, they're trying to take taxpayer dollars that it doesn't cost them anything.
Think characters like Josh Allen, whom I love, by the way.
Yeah. And it's, it's the entire thing just kind of blows my mind. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll be with Dr. Jenna Robinson. So be a couple of minutes, and we'll be back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, and I'm joined now by Dr. Jenna Robinson from the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. Dr. Robinson, welcome to the program. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Dr. Jenna Robinson. It's my Monday, so things are not working exactly right. How are you? Welcome to the program.
Doing great. Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, I published one of the pieces that was put out by your organization about the university hiding all sorts of DEI programs. And I want to talk to you about that. But first, why don't you take a minute or two, tell my audience about yourself, about the James G. Martin Center, and then we'll get into it.
Thanks. I'm Jenna Robinson. I'm the president of the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal, where I've worked since 2007. And the Martin Center is an organization that works for excellence and accountability in higher education. And we're especially interested in state policy. Obviously, a lot's going on at the federal level right now, trying to bring accountability to higher education. But we are more interested in what states, individual universities, and individual trustees can do to promote excellence on their own campuses.
Great. Well, we have, the University of Wyoming is a continual argument in the legislature. It's Wyoming's only university, as you know, and man, do we spend a heck of a lot of money there. And to me, it seems like it doesn't matter what program it is. The university continually comes to the legislature, i.e. taxpayers, and says, well, we need $100 million here, $100 million there. But what's hidden behind the scenes is a lot of indoctrination. So there's the one piece that I published that was how they're hiding DEI programs. And I was wondering if you could just kind of go through that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that what we found, and when my colleague looked at this, is that lawmakers told the University of Wyoming to end DEI, as did a lot of other lawmakers in other states. And instead of actually ending the DEI programs, they were renamed, reimagined, moved. And behind all of that, very little real change was happening. And so that is what my colleague Jovan exposed. And like I said, we're seeing the same pattern all over the country, where lawmakers are very clear that anything that is, racially discriminatory, promoting these racially discriminatory views, doesn't belong in higher education, but the universities are trying to, get around those laws in various ways.
Why do you think that is? I mean, when I think of a university, maybe I'm just being too idealistic, but when I think of an institution of higher learning, what comes to my mind is like diversity of thought, that we should be talking about all of this stuff. But it seems to me that a lot of schools have disregarded this whole idea of a free marketplace of ideas, and instead have replaced it with a lot of courses, that dabble in DEI, and there's all sorts of. There was the Harvard scandal with the affirmative action. I mean, there's lots of different examples. So why do you think? I mean, maybe this is an easy question, but why do you think that universities are doing that? I mean, it certainly goes against their mission, and I mean,
right. So I think I think it started from a good place. If you go back in time, universities in this country discriminated against Black people, against Asian people, against many people. And so at the beginning, it was just, we have to undo this discrimination. We have to put everyone on a level playing field. And, once we got to that point, once we got rid of all the discriminatory laws, and everyone was legally equal, they took the next step and said, well, let's keep going in the same direction. If we were going in a good direction, we'll keep going. But they overcorrected, and so the idea got entrenched that we'll have to do more diversity, more inclusion. We are not where we need to be until everyone is, absolutely equal across all measurements. And in practice, that's just discrimination of a different kind. And I think it also embeds the assumption that if someone looks different from you, it means that they think differently from you. But we know that that's not the case. Looking at superficial, categories of race or gender, that's not going to guarantee you viewpoint diversity.
Okay, so then I guess the question is, how do we, moving towards viewpoint diversity, is it as easy as just getting rid of all these DEI type programs, or is there something more deeply rooted in in the culture of a university? I mean, how do we root it out?
Right. So I think absolutely the first step is, as Chief Justice Roberts said, to stop discriminating on race, you have to stop discriminating on race. That's the first step. So you get rid of all the discriminatory programs at universities. And these are more than just DEI offices. Often you'll have scholarships reserved for a particular race or gender, programs that are reserved for a particular race or gender, faculty hiring schemes that are reserved for a particular race or gender. And so it does take a lot of time to kind of root all of those things out. In addition to, stop using diversity statements as a litmus test for hiring. Stop using any kind of statements that are meant to suss out a person's opinion on a controversial political topic as a litmus test for hiring. And so I think absolutely the first step is just stop doing all of the bad things that have gotten us into a position that is, discriminatory and also continually pointing in only one political direction.
Well, and I think that continue.
I was going to say, but there absolutely is more to do. I think one of the things that happened as the university got more and more left is that a lot of programs were eliminated that have historically been more conservative leaning. So military history got, extinguished at a lot of our schools, diplomatic history, constitutional development. There are a lot of fields that are entirely different because of the kind of lockstep, far left progressive thinking on campuses. And we need to bring back some of those fields so that everything isn't so lopsided.
Well, and I think one thing that gets lost is in this whole discussion of how left-leaning universities are, we often don't look at the results. So in Wyoming, and I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I would say the vast majority of secondary teachers that are hired in the state come from the University of Wyoming. And while local school districts may say, hey, we don't want any of this diversity crap at our school, you have to look at where those teachers were educated. And that if you come from a liberal institution or one that, has all of this liberal or DEI garbage in it, well, then you're going to be teaching from that perspective. Now, maybe your curriculum isn't going to be straight up the book gender queer, but certainly your viewpoint is going to come from there. So talk to me about the effects of the effects on secondary education coming from when teachers come from these institutions.
Absolutely, and our schools of education are some of the most far left if you look at disciplines across the university. Schools of education are always amongst the furthest left. And, some of them don't have, any conservatives or any Republicans on the faculty. And that means they're seeing a very truncated set of ideas. And in fact, most of our schools of education are now focusing more on kind of far left pedagogy than they are on content. And I think that is one of the biggest things that we're seeing trickle down into our schools is that, teaching content, teaching phonics, teaching, reading, writing, and arithmetic is seen as conservative. And so it's being left out of our schools. And so you don't get teachers just teaching students facts about our history or science or anything that's going to, help them to thrive as they move through their education. And also things like phonics have been de-emphasized, as has achievement, because the idea is that everyone is looked at as through the lens of trauma, through the lens of social emotional learning.
Oh, tell me about it.
And actual achievement is kind of the last thing on the list. And so ensuring that students know what they need to know to progress to the next grade has really been neglected. And so we get students who get through high school and they don't know, sixth grade math.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we have a community college here where the studio's at in Sheridan, and just on a whim, I walked into their admissions office one day and I said, "Hey, what percentage do you think of incoming freshmen have to be given remedial courses? Whatever type, whether it's English or math or whatever." And they told me that it's 70% of incoming freshmen have to take some form of remedial course. I mean, that's a shocking number.
It
And
is
I,
absolutely shocking. I mean, there are remedial math courses at Harvard now. You know,
Oh,
Harvard
God.
that used to require everyone to know Latin and Greek now offers remedial math. And that shows you kind of how far we've fallen in terms of, just nationwide educational preparation.
Well, and I think if you look at the NAEP scores, the NAEP scores, I think it's as plain as the nose on my face, which is pretty plain. In Wyoming, I think that the last numbers I heard that for eighth graders, roughly half of our eighth graders can't read at a proficient level. And the scary part of it is the older students get, the worse their proficiency gets. And so when you have a graduating senior that frankly doesn't know how to read, I mean, I don't even know how we solve that problem. How do we solve it?
Right. Well, it starts in kindergarten or even before kindergarten, going back to phonemic awareness. There was a trend or later in the 20th century saying that we need to do whole language, kind of self-discovery type of reading instead of, sitting down with students and saying, A says ah, B says buh. But no, that's what you have to do. You have to teach students explicitly what sounds each letter makes. You have to teach them what sounds that letter combinations make so that CH is ch. You have to be very explicit. But the educational trends were all towards, discovery learning, whole language learning, holistic learning, child-centered learning. And so teachers were taught that it was wrong to be the sage on the stage, to tell students what they need to know and insist that they know it. But we have to go back to that model, and a lot of states have. That's the good news, that a lot of states have realized that they absolutely must teach phonics if they want their students to learn to read. Now, the next step is that you have to give students, something to read about. And, we're not there yet. A lot of states and a lot of institutions, a lot of schools still say, well, they just need basic document literacy. And so, you can teach them to read anything. But the fact is that students read better about content that they're familiar with. And so that means you have to give students basic facts about things they're likely to read about. There was a very famous educational philosopher, E.D. Hirsch, and he did an experiment. And he tested, do students read better, based on just, how they score on these abstract categories, or do they read better based on content? So he gave them a test, and the subject they were reading about was baseball.
Okay.
And it turns out that the students who read it best were the students who knew something about baseball.
Weird.
And so it shows you that you have to have content knowledge. You can't read your history textbook, you can't read the newspaper if you haven't been given some background knowledge about, the United States is the place where we live. Wyoming is the state in which we live. Here's some basic history of our country, of our state. Here's how the government works. You can't interpret what you're reading unless you have that background knowledge. And so schools need to fill that in.
All right, I've got two more questions for you. Now, looking through your website, it seems like you guys are kind of looking at things in all sorts of different states. And so my question would be, how do other states compare to the University of Wyoming? I mean, you're in North Carolina, or at least part of your bio says that. But how does Wyoming compare to other states, along these issues we've been talking about?
So North Carolina is in a different place than a lot of states because it's growing. So North Carolina is actually kind of an exception. Most states are in the same situation that Wyoming is in many, many ways. They are losing students. I looked up Wyoming, the University of Wyoming's enrollment. It turns out it has decreased 21% since 2015. 21%. That's huge. But other states are facing the same thing because we had a baby bust about 18 years ago. So this is something that's happening nationwide. We've got this huge demographic change. So University of Wyoming is part of that trend. University of Wyoming is also, with kind of making these cosmetic changes to DEI programs. We've seen the same things across the country. A bunch of headlines in Texas about DEI offices being turned into offices of belonging. Even at neighboring Utah Valley University, they uncovered the same thing, that the Office of DEI was turned into the Office of Institutional Engagement and Effectiveness, but they admitted publicly that they weren't altering the underlying mission of equity and belonging. So we're seeing a lot of the same trends in Wyoming that we're seeing elsewhere. We're also seeing in Wyoming increases in per student spending for administrators, for institutional spending. So not for faculty, but for the managers and the non-instructional faculty. So Wyoming it has a lot of the same problems that we are seeing nationwide.
One of my favorite statistics, and it doesn't necessarily relate to the University of Wyoming, but it's more, primary and secondary school. But over the last few years, that enrollment in Wyoming schools has actually gone down roughly 2,000 kids. Well, during the same time period, administration and staff went up 3,600 positions. And so not only did we lose a whole bunch of kids, we added a whole bunch of administrators. And, we wonder why you spend 20 grand, 21,000 per student, and, you get mediocre performance. And it all comes from the administration, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. They are, the University of Wyoming is continuing to expand its administrative spending while its student body shrinks. And you wonder why you have all these problems. I mean, really, the faculty are the core of the university. That's where the spending should be, not on administrators.
Yeah, absolutely. So last question for you. There's a number of pieces on your website about Wyoming. So how did your center get interested in Wyoming? I mean, has this been a focus for a while? Or is it just hired a guy that's from Wyoming and we went that direction? Or attended Wyoming anyway?
Sorry. We have been looking for other states that are ripe for reform, places that we think are likely to make positive changes. And I think Wyoming has such an excellent, political culture in Wyoming. The people of Wyoming understand what it means to work hard, to get things done. And we thought Wyoming was an excellent target. And also as you said, we do have an employee who works in Wyoming, so he's got that local knowledge. And so those two things came together, and it just made sense to try to find out, what is really going on at the University of Wyoming and how can it be made better.
Excellent. All right, so just take a couple of minutes and tell me if my viewers want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
They can do that at jamesgmartin.center, and they can also find us on Twitter at Academic Renewal.
All right. Well, Dr. Robinson, thank you for taking a few minutes to visit with me. And feel free to, if you've got anything related to Wyoming, shoot it my way.
We'd love to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. All right. So there we go. The Dr. Jenna Robinson from the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. And, I think it's helpful to hear from folks that are not necessarily in Wyoming or aren't at Wyoming at all, that have been looking at how our university, how our state operates. And, I thought it was pretty interesting. Ken, did what she say kind of match up with what you're seeing in the legislature?
I don't know. I wasn't paying any attention. Just kidding. It's interesting, her comments about the culture of Wyoming and the type of people that are here. And I've got to be honest with you, I am a little less sure of that than I was a couple of years ago. Okay. I think it's a little bit like the frog in the warming water. The people of Wyoming have gotten very used to a lot of things and generationally have changed, and now we think certain things are normal. And one of them, I would say, you remember as well as I, that when Obamacare, the idea first came out, what the government is your health provider, was absolutely repulsive. We failed to get that turned around at the national level. And then here recently, There was just a proposal, they called it Bear Care,
Yeah.
to have the state run an insurance program. And a lot of people, it's amazing how many people thought, well, that's a good idea.
I know,
We
it
could do
shocked
that."
me.
Yeah. And so I think we need to act quickly to contrast how true conservative, how it works, or we run a danger of seeing it lost forever. And I know that sounds maybe a little hyperbolic, but I don't think it is.
Well, it's while I was talking to Dr. Robinson, what was going through my head was, why is it? And there's this big lie about families that homeschool their kids, that they don't get the education that they do at the public school. Now, while I would think that in
I dare
some
you
cases,
to say that in front of my wife.
well, yeah, exactly. I think in some cases, in a minority of cases, that's probably true. But Ken, once a week I teach a class with some homeschool kids, and for their age, I think that they're pretty darn advanced. Why is that? You would think we spend all this money, public school, that ought to work better.
Because parents who care enough to actually do that and commit to doing that really do care about what their kids are learning, and they're going to put the effort into it. There's also people always say, well, the problem with homeschooling is the kids they're not exposed to culture. They're not exposed.
I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the point. But when you think about it, what we do in public school is we herd all the kids in and we put them in a room together where basically everybody around them is the same age.
Yeah.
With homeschools, you don't do that. You've got kids of different ages learning together, and they're around adults all the time. And you can almost tell when you go meet children at wherever you might be, which ones are homeschooled and which ones aren't, because the ones that are homeschooled are much more able to function in society, to be able to speak to people of different ages or whatever. They're confident. There are exceptions to every rule, but remember the old one-room schoolhouses? Well,
Yeah.
You don't, but
Well,
I actually do.
about them, right? The little red schoolhouse.
Yeah. The older students would help the younger students. They all worked in there together. People would come in from the community to help them with projects or whatever. We need to see schools move more into that rather than being factories for little worker bees.
Well, and the problem is that if you have a government solution to anything, that one solution gets used for everybody. And so you end up with a homogenized system, because that's the very nature of government. And as you heard Dr. Robinson say, hey, people are different, right? You can't treat everybody the same, and if you do, you end up with just a homogenized group of
which is really what
little
socialism is all about, is everybody becomes equally miserable.
Yeah,
what
well,
happens.
that's about the only thing that is successful with socialism. Well, anyway, fascinating topic, and I know that we're not going to solve it today, but we have to continue to talk about it. I mean, if you care about your kids at all, you need to be well aware of what's happening to them, in high school and grade school, and definitely at college. All right. Well, there's one piece I want to cover before we take another break. I'm staring at it for since we're talking about education. I think this kind of fits in, and maybe you saw this over the weekend. But Tampon Tim Walz, has said that the children in Minnesota are just like Anne Frank. Now, this is from Breitbart News, and let me just read a little bit, and then I'm going to play you the video of where he said that. A Washington, D.C.-based Holocaust museum criticized Governor Tim Walz for comparing U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement immigration laws to Nazi Germany. Of course he did, because that's the only argument that the left has, that, they're Nazis. Yep, this is the Holocaust. I mean, it's ridiculous. In a post on X, the United States Holocaust Museum pointed out that Anne Frank, who had been targeted and murdered solely because she was Jewish. The museum's post came a day after Tim Walz held a press conference and called for President Donald Trump to pull back ICE and Border Patrol agents from the state. Ken, go ahead and play video number 3 for me, if you would.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
Oh my God. And this is part of the problem with media, with people like Tim Walz, is everything is hyperbole. Everything is the worst possible thing that could possibly happen. And in this case, it's the Holocaust. And let me tell you why they always go to that. Because there are certain concepts, there are certain words in our culture that you really don't have to have any backup to them at all, right? Let me give you, for instance. So if I call somebody a racist, I don't have to have any backup to that. It's just automatically assumed that I was calling them a racist for a reason. And so what it does is it shifts the burden of proof over to the other side, because the obvious response to that is, I'm not a racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. So it shifts the burden of proof. The same thing holds true for this whole Nazi Germany reference.
I'm not a racist. I never drive fast.
Only you can. But when we look at Tampon Tim's allusion to Nazi Germany, the reason he uses that is everybody knows that it was so horrible. And so if he says this over here, the ICE enforcement, well, that's Nazi Germany. Well, that conjures up an image in your mind that's so horrible that nobody, he doesn't even have to explain it. And you assume that he's the governor. Well, it's Tim Walz, so we don't assume this anymore at all. But for most people, we assume that, well, yeah, there had to be a reason why he said it. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But we need to get back to, and this is why I started out the program the way that we did. We have to get back to talking about facts. Things that are real. And if we want to have a conversation, that's the only way that we can do it. Talk about facts, talk about things that are real, and stop with all of this hyperbolic bull crap. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our next break. And when we come back, we're going to be joined with my friend John Baggett. We'll be back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Watch out. Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. Cowboy State Politics Live, this program, the podcast, the Outrider, the official newsletter of Cowboy State Politics, and now the Open Range Record. I think I'm a glutton for punishment. I just keep heaping stuff on top of me.
I think you just don't like to sleep.
Well, that's actually, you know what, I hadn't intended that, but that is the result. I am getting a lot less sleep lately. Well, welcome back to the program, my friends. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. And it shows the reach of this program. Ken and I looked at it, last week, and just over 1 month, this program has been seen 57,000 times. So something to be proud of, I think. Well,
thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. I mean, I told you hitting that refresh button would do a lot. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome to the program a friend of ours, John Baggett. John, welcome to the program.
Hey, guys. Congratulations. That's somebody's out there listening.
Yeah.
Watching, paying
It's
attention.
my mom. It's totally my mom.
And her friends.
Well, we know it's not the teachers she works with, but
Yeah, well, they probably sneak in at some of that audience that wants to see what the other side is doing. I do that with some other programming.
Well, I told Bags over here that if he wanted to be on the program, then he had to, contribute at least 5,000 views. And I assume since he's here that's probably happened. So I think, John, I'll just let you introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Well, hey, first of all, nice operation you got here, guys. Very impressed with the Cowboy State Politics studio.
Thank
It
you.
is really
We're
nice.
very proud of it.
So before I let you get off of that, as you talk about yourself, you have to say why you're qualified to comment on that, because a lot of people come in here and say, "Oh, wow, this is really cool," but you have a little bit of background to be able to measure that. So before you're done, put that
I
in there.
am a radio dinosaur, ladies and gentlemen. I started in radio at KROE Radio in Sheridan, Wyoming in 1981, working for Kim Love. God bless him and may he rest in peace. Gave me an opportunity because it was an internship while I was going to school at Sheridan College. They used to have a communications program there. And he let me work nights and eventually days on KROE. But at night I was doing the rock and roll station. Z94 now here in Sheridan, Wyoming. Used to be just FM 94. It was a rock and roll station. And I got a shot at like 20 years old. And it turned into a 45-year career in radio. From here to Laramie, got to work for Kurt Gowdy in Laramie right after leaving Sheridan. And Bob Beck, some of you folks know him. Bob and I worked together at KROE. In fact, he was the one that went to Laramie and said, "Hey, Bags, we got a midday show. You want to do this?" And so he brought me down there. And then from there, I went over to Cheyenne and worked a rock and roll show there for many years and did play-by-play for Cheyenne East, Cheyenne Central, LCCC, and eventually made my way down to Denver in 1988 because my bride of 37 years,
she's a patient woman.
Oh, boy. She got a job in Denver. And so I went in to Kurt Gowdy himself, into his office. Great man, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, he was a man with his stature, at least in our industry. He's on the Mount Rushmore of great all-time announcers. And went in and told him, I said, "Hey, Miss Wright, Deborah, was moving to Denver. She got a job, and I need a job." And he got on the phone right then and there and called a couple people down there. Long story short, spent 32 years in Denver radio. So
that's a huge market compared to where we're at here.
Well, and then I got to come home. Listen, thank you, Lord, and prayers answered that it all worked out. I came back and I was running the Bighorn Mountain radio operation here in Sheridan until they went bye-bye.
It's a kind way of putting it.
Now I'm
through no fault of your own.
Through no fault of my own. I
probably
didn't help the situation, but I certainly didn't cause it. But they met their demise for whatever reason. It's public knowledge. I won't get into it too far. It's that Legend Communications story. But anyway, my friend, known him since we were teenagers, Bruce Garber, gave me a job in real estate, told me to go get my license, so I did, and I'm doing that. And I've been doing some radio podcast type stuff as well. And you guys, I'm a fan of yours. I listen. I argue with you without you able to argue back.
Well, you'll notice it's not very often we turn the phones on.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't want to hear it, you don't have to. But it's great that you guys have this, and you're able to provide a perspective. And again, as Ken just mentioned, and you talked about the numbers, folks are tuning in. Mm-hmm. So you obviously are doing something right. And again,
we don't know what that is, but evidently we're doing something right.
Well, hey, in this format too, they can see you. So you must be doing some good content, because you're not chasing them away with your what do they call it? You got the looks for radio.
Yeah, we have the faces for radio. Yeah. But somehow people put up with it anyway.
Yeah,
you betcha.
And I think that we're living in an amazing time, because I don't think ever before that we've seen a true free marketplace of ideas. And by that I mean that you don't have to get into this industry the way that you did, to somehow find your way into a radio studio, and just have to know the people. Now, all you got to do is you buy a microphone, and you can get a podcast account for free, and you can just start talking, and it's truly, and it helps to know some people.
Well, I think that's an advantage now, is just all this technology and stuff that you can do on your own, as you said, with a computer and a microphone. Maybe a nice headset like this too, guys. I'm taking this with me. Anyway, that's an advantage now. But back then, there was more opera. I think back in the late '70s, early '80s. I think in the heyday of radio, traditional broadcast radio, there were opportunities like that I had here at KROE. A lot of small stations. Mm-hmm. If you look at the background of some of the great announcers today, either radio, television, online, a lot of them had their start in local radio. And there was a lot more opportunity then, because it was all live and local. Yep. And now it's corporate, franchised. A lot of the programming is pumped in from other places. They'll customize it to a local market, so it sounds like it's local, but it's somebody sitting in their basement or a nice studio like this in Denver or somewhere else. So again, so that was the advantage I had, because they needed a body to sit there from 10 at night till 2 in the morning, and I was willing to do it at 20 years old.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're that age. You don't. My wife accuses me of that. You're a night owl. My wife likes to go to bed pretty early, and I often wonder, how would I have fared, having like a late night show. Like for instance, like the first time I listened to Glenn Beck, I was driving through Casper at like 1 o'clock in the morning on my way home from Laramie, and the car I had, it only had an AM radio in it. And, so the closer you get to Casper, you can pick up
K2
K2 pretty solid. Mm-hmm. And actually you could pick it up in Shirley Basin, and, it was pretty solid. But anyway, I was driving through through Casper at 1 o'clock in the morning. And, I've always been a fan of radio. I often talk about, when I was little, I had the big console radio that took up half a wall.
Oh yeah.
And I think,
worked that board.
Yeah. And, I was like 10 or 11, and I found Rush Limbaugh. And
I got hooked on Captain Coma, KOMA in Oklahoma City.
That was a big signal.
Yeah, well,
you and I both.
That was.
I credit a gentleman by the name of Steve Budd in Wheatland, Wyoming. Steve, he might be listening. First of all, I moved to Wheatland, Wyoming in 1976 from Miami, Florida. It's a long story. There's a divorce involved. There's me being chased out to Wyoming because of my misbehavior as a 15-year-old in Miami. But anyway, point being is I went to work at the Medicine Bow Ranch Company, and a big old cowboy named Steve Budd ended up going into the Marine Corps and kicking ass there. But he turned me on to KOMA, We'd be there late at night, and I have, like, right now, my dog, who's not here with me today, I debated bringing him. His name is Waylon.
Of course.
So it was Steve Budd who turned me on to country music, and that was listening to KOMA out of Oklahoma City. We were there on the transistor AM radio in a bunkhouse in Medicine Bow, Wyoming, coming from Miami, Florida, literally in shorts, flip-flops on South Beach to a bunkhouse at the Medicine Bow Ranch Company. And just things started to change, and that'll help explain why I'm a little bit odd, David.
So the fact that we're rambling wants me to have you point this out. I was in exile in Colorado for quite a while. And one of the things that I truly loved was listening to Dave and Scott on the Sports Zoo on KOA down there during the drive time. And I had a lot of drive time. I was living in Colorado Springs and working in Boulder or Pueblo or wherever,
The Sports Zoo.
Yeah. Tell us about your relationship with the Sports Zoo and experience.
Yes. Okay. So at some point, I am executive producer at KOA, 850 KOA, the blowtorch, 50,000 watt. And I will say it was that era of my life. So that was early or mid 90s into the early 2000s. That's that era. And the best job I ever had in radio was being an executive producer at 850 KOA, because I had my nose into every aspect of it. If somebody didn't show up for a talk show, Mike Rosen, I sat down and did hours of talk radio on Mike Rosen's show because he got sick last minute and there was nobody there. So here I am sitting down on the blowtorch doing a little talk radio.
Yeah, Mike was brilliant.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, and was a big fan. And I'll be honest with you, I became wasn't always conservative, gentlemen. And my best friends and those that know me well will vouch for that. And I was a Mike Rosen fan before I was a Rush Limbaugh fan. And Mike came on right before Rush. So I saw the work that Mike put in, the research. So it impressed me with, okay, you may or may not agree with this guy, but he had information and he was well educated on the topic. And so he immediately was credible to me. And then I started paying attention to what he was saying, and very slowly the evolution. And then, of course, the Clinton administration. That was the last hurrah for me as a Democrat. So,
well, at least you admit it.
Well, and I bring that up. We're talking about Scott and Dave. Believe it or not, I call Scott close enough to call him Scooter. But can I tell? I got a story about him. This will sum it up. Okay. So we're doing live as the producer. We took the Sports Zoo up to Cheyenne Frontier Days, many years in a row. Because of my background there, having worked in Cheyenne, lots of connections. And so we would do the Sports Zoo, that was an afternoon drive, 3 to 7, I believe. And we'd set up right outside the arena there at Cheyenne Frontier Days and had a ball. I mean, we had every rodeo star, cowboy poet, you name it, any newsmaker related. We just had great fun. And then the show would end at 7 o'clock. And then I had a rock and roll show on the Fox at the time. It was the All Request Saturday Night with your buddy Bags. And so I would do my show live from the Cheyenne Club, right? Well, meanwhile, Scott and Dave wrap it up, and I get finished at about 10 o'clock, and we rush over. We're staying at the old hitching post. Who remembers the hitching post? Well, if you remember the hitching post, they had swinging saloon doors into the bar, just like in the old days, like Clint Eastwood on a boardwalk coming in and saying who's first. Anyway, so Scott, I said, okay, we're going to party after the show, and we're all staying in the same place. So I knock on Scott's door, say, hey, let's go. They had a live band in there, the whole thing. You could hear it from where we were. And Scott walks out of the room. Scott was, those that remember the old Nuggets, and he played for Detroit as well. Scott's 7 foot tall, barefoot, okay? And he comes out, he's got cowboy boots on, riding cowboy boots. So I'm saying a minimum of a 2-inch
Right,
heel.
2
So
inch
now
left on him.
we're about 7'2" Cowboy. He's got a black 10-gallon cowboy hat on top of that.
Now he's 7'8".
So now he's 7'8". We're approaching an 8-foot giant. He comes out. It startled me, and had known the guy for years. So he comes out of the hotel. Holy crap, Scott! He goes, "Let's go, Bags." And we scoot down the hallway. We get to the front door. And I told him I stopped because I had a camera. I wanted to get some pictures, And so I said, "Wait a minute." So I rush in to get in front of, because I know what this is going to look like. So sure enough, Scott waits, and of course those swinging saloon doors. Scott comes in, pushes those saloon doors, boom, knocks him out. He has to duck down, of course, to get in the bar.
Right.
And he takes his hat off, he throws it on the ground, and he says, "Who's first?" And this is a packed Cheyenne Frontier Days Saturday night crowd. And he obviously made a big impression, pardon the pun. So that's Scott. The show was great. Dave Logan, you talk about oozing credibility.
Yeah,
I don't
who
even
could
know.
forget
He
Dave
just
Logan?
won his 13th state championship this year.
That's true. He is probably one of the most amazing high school coaches there's ever been, and Sheridan has a really good one
Yeah.
too. But Dave was also drafted into 3 different professional sports.
Exactly. He's
That
one of
is
only,
unheard of.
I think Dave Winfield is the only other one I can think of that did that. And of course, we lived in Lakewood, and my sons went to Green Mountain High School, which were rivals with Wheat Ridge High School, where Dave went to school, where he's a legend. And he is obviously, but also, I mean, he goes from there, and people have been talking to his name with every time the CU football coaching job would come up, they say, "What about Dave Logan?" And I've talked to Dave, and he was on my show relatively recently, and he said he just loves coaching high school. He doesn't want to go, and he loves being the radio voice of the Broncos and traveling the country. So he doesn't.
Yeah.
He's just thanks for asking, but no thanks. And we're friends, so it's hard for me to say, but I am a huge fan of his. So sometimes when you're sitting in the same room with him, it's kind of like when I was working for Kurt Gowdy, legendary, and yet you're having these very casual conversations about fly tying with the guy who hosted the American Sportsman. Like, you're sitting there dumbfounded. That's how I feel sometimes when I'm talking to Dave about the Broncos.
Well, Ken and I have this conversation a lot too, that, 6 years ago, neither of us would be sitting around going, hey, let's call Harriet Hageman. Neither of us would have, a time to hang out with James O'Keefe or, interview some of these really incredible people that we've talked to, that we've been able to rub shoulders with. And, it's really amazing how God works.
That's the blessing part of what we do. I have met presidents, that era, as I mentioned, with the executive producer role at KOA, presidents, superstar athletes, actors, and musicians, and so on and so forth, that, sometimes I just have to, look back and say, wow.
And now you're here.
Like I said, celebrities
That's right.
always get to hang out with. So thanks for having me in today, guys. Really appreciate it.
So this is a politics show, so I guess we should probably talk some politics. And so there's a bill in the Wyoming legislature to sell off state land. And, man, let me back up. So Wyoming has a big problem with a checkerboard. If you look at a map of state and federal and private land, Wyoming appears as this giant checkerboard. And one of the problems that results from that is access.
Yeah.
And, when the Rock Springs RMP was happening or was being proposed, you had private landowners that had a chunk of property out in the middle of BLM. And, well, the BLM said, sorry, you can't cross our property anymore. So you had private property owners that were cut off from their land. And so the only way to fix that, in my mind, is to make some changes with, state land, private land, if you could, federal land. If you talk to conservatives, they'll tell you, some of them will tell you that Wyoming is 46% of a state. That's been pretty, you go to any convention, you'll hear that. And so, this is an issue.
So I just want to throw this out there before we go too far with this. Jacob Wasserberger is the sponsor of this. He is related to the JD that we spoke of earlier. JD's his uncle.
That guy.
Jacob and I are friends. Jacob is a consistent conservative. I disagree with him on this thing, but I don't want anybody to get the idea that we're out there ragging on Jacob.
Oh, no.
Or that this is in any way affiliated with the other story that we mentioned. So, Jacob, I hope you're listening. Love you, man. You do great work. Maybe you want to reconsider this one, but here's
Well,
a
I
chance.
don't know. I think it's worthy of conversation because of what I said before. We do have a checkerboard problem. You could add in there the corner crossing debacle that, was just the federal judge just said corner crossings. Okay, well, that's a result of this checkerboard thing. And then the Mike Lee proposal in the big, beautiful bill where we're going to, sell off some federal property. So this is a big issue. But the bill is essentially going to sell state property for, what was it, Ken, $1 an acre?
Yeah, 10-acre parcels at $1 an acre.
So
there's where the beginning of my problems are. But you guys hash this one out.
Yeah. First, I think that the state has a fiduciary responsibility to schools, and it's in the Constitution that we have to make money off of state-owned property. And at $1 an acre, I don't really see that as making money. In fact, I might have to say no to that deal. What do you think, John?
Well, my first thought was, and this comes after 32 years in Denver, and essentially this is free at $1 an acre.
Yeah,
it's free. I have seen.
I got $20 in my pocket. We'll be land rich here.
I want to say this too about Mr. Wasserberger and this bill, that thank God somebody's trying to do something about the housing issue.
Sure.
I don't know if this is it. We'll debate that. But somebody's doing something, and there's a lot of other people who are just sitting on their hands over this issue. I want more Wyomingites, young people, to stay home here in Wyoming. I'm telling you, people, the grass is not always greener, young people out there. But the issue that I have with it, after witnessing what free stuff does and who gets involved in that, I'll use like Section 8, for example. If you look at some of the properties that are given away or subsidized in the Denver area and probably any other major municipality, they're in very short order, they become run down.
Yeah.
And they become tenements and slums very quickly, because I think it's just human nature.
Well, you get something for nothing.
Something for nothing, you treat it like it's nothing. But if you have to invest in something and you've got some blood equity, some kind of equity invested in it, then you're going to take care of it. I think that's just human nature.
Right.
It's why our system works better than those others, socialism and communism, is because folks have a dog in the fight and they want to take care of it.
Can I throw this in there too?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. You remember when you were in grade school? Maybe you weren't. When you and I, Bags, were in grade school, Mom used to bake cookies, and I'd go to school with a couple of cookies, and I'd try to get them out at the morning before the lunch came, and my teacher would say, "You put those away. You haven't got one for everybody."
Mm-hmm.
What makes Wyoming unique is the amount of public lands. You can still, not too many years ago when I lived over in the Worland Thermop area, you could jump on a motorcycle, a four-wheeler, even your vehicle, and you could just drive for miles, go out all over the place. That's Wyoming. That's what's cool about it. I do not want to see state lands sold off for any purpose. I was adamantly opposed to selling the parcel up in Jackson, whatever it was called. Some things should not be for sale. And the fact that a few would benefit from the public at the public's cost, we ignore the fiduciary responsibility, is reprehensible to me. You don't have enough for everybody, so nobody gets any. And all those other things go into there too. But this is a bad idea in so many ways.
Well, and I don't think that it was necessarily. I mean, I think there's a lot of other implications that go along with it. And you mentioned one of them. So-called affordable housing. Now, there's a lot of places around the state where, we're developing these mostly private, kind of public housing complexes, and it's turned into a giant, money transfer to private equity firms. There's one of them here in Sheridan. It's Peak Apartments. That's the only place that I've ever seen where property taxes on a giant piece of property actually went down. Weird. I don't know how that happens. But I don't think that
in this era of heightened costs and property values. I hear you.
So the question is then, I don't think that this is the right solution either. I mean, I think that it's the way things are. You're going to have somebody figure out a way where the dollar an acre turns into them being a giant landowner.
Well, 10 acres, where did that number come from? What do they expect? Do they think they're going to farm it? Do they think they're going to ranch it? Why not? Why wasn't it smaller increments, like lots versus acreage?
Well, and if you look at the subdivision rules in Wyoming, I mean, there are some counties where it's only 40s that you can subdivide. Some of them it's only 20s, and so there's a lot of other rules that are involved here. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I applaud Jacob for trying to think outside of the box for on some of these affordable housing type issues. But I'm with Ken. I think this is a rotten idea.
Well, what I don't understand, another aspect, and there is a list about it, is so obviously, and full disclosure here, I'm in the real estate business now as an agent here at Sheridan, and so in Wyoming, I'm licensed throughout the state. So I know that because I've sold raw land before, and there's significant costs involved, to get hooked up to the grid.
Oh yeah,
number
infrastructure.
one, and thousands and tens of thousands. How far are you from a county road where they've got electricity? They're going to get to this parcel of land. So they think you're going into it, and these folks don't have to have any resources, but $1 an acre. How are they going to develop it if they have no resources? Is government, are taxes, is somebody going to pay to get him hooked up to the grid? And obviously with, digging a hole for the septic. And so there's significant costs involved in developing raw land.
There's a good example of what you're talking about over in Buffalo. You head up towards the mountain, you go up the big hill towards the veterans home. Off to the right, there's a pretty large subdivision. Well, at the time that thing was developed, there was no zoning, there was nothing up there. And so this developer, he just kind of cut it up into little chunks, however he wanted, and you ended up with, this guy drills a well, digs a septic. His neighbor drills a well, digs a septic. There was no paved roads up there. And so after, 10, 15 years, what ended up happening is people's wells ended up testing positive for what was coming out of the septic system. You had mail trucks getting stuck because they didn't pave the roads.
Right.
And there's a lot of other ancillary things that happen that completely unintended, but that you could have foreseen in this. And I think those infrastructure problems you bring up are a good part of that. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll pick this back up. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Program. Cowboy State Politics Live. We're joined today by our pal, John Baggett. John has a long history in broadcasting, and we're talking about the bill to maybe sell off state property for $1 an acre. A ridiculous idea, if you ask me. But there's a lot of other questions. One of them being, so where's all this property going to come from?
Exactly.
We're talking about state land, and there are only a few state sections in every township, and most of them, not most, well, yeah, most of them are probably not next to a town.
I was going to say, how far from civilization are these eligible lands? So, you know.
Does it include up by our cabin, which is in a beautiful spot? There's a state section. Is that going to be included as well?
Well, you go around Sheridan, where public land is hard to find.
Yeah.
And there are some places where state lands have kind of been consolidated by swapping and trading. And you go out there anytime during hunting season, and those state lands are overrun.
Exactly.
So you're going to sell those to an individual. There's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Ken, we already have a problem. Sorry, David. Already have a problem with private landowners cutting off access to hunters.
That's where I was going.
Okay, the olden days, I remember walking up to the door and knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, would you mind if I went out there?" And in those days, I'm talking about the 70s and 80s, where the rancher, the landowner would say, "Okay, that South 40 over there is okay, just don't shoot my cows."
Yeah.
But you were given access. And so this kind of represents potentially more public lands that hunters, fishermen, hikers won't have access to because it's privatized.
Well, and let's be honest, there's a lot of money that is made in this state off of hunting, fishing, guiding, which I guess that's kind of hunting too. But it's a big part of the economy, and I think that's, man, there's a lot of people that they don't have access to private land. They don't know somebody, or even if they do, they don't have enough money to pay what the landowner wants. And then I think maybe this is another issue that I don't know, that I'm sure that it hasn't come up, but let me give you a for instance. So down by Buffalo, south of Buffalo, along the face of the mountain, there was this chunk of state land, and it directly abutted the national forest. So it's kind of between Buffalo and Crazy Woman Canyon. Well, a lot of people bought property that was directly adjacent to the state section, and the reason they did that is they would have access to the national forest. And so they built these, really nice places, and some of them, I guess it doesn't even have to be a nice place, but you spend a chunk of money that's right by a state section, that's right by a national forest. It
gives you some confidence nobody's going to build right on top of you.
Except when there's a state land swap. And that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
Governor Gordon was involved
Surprise.
in that. Yeah, these people literally woke up to no trespassing signs. And so, I mean, how do you balance that? I mean, people spent a lot of money to build their house where they did, and now all of a sudden we're going to sell it for $1 an acre?
Well, to tell you the truth, as a real estate agent, sometimes I'm pointing that out to somebody when they're buying a parcel of private land, that it's adjacent to state land that won't be developed. Now what? Who's responsible when it is sold into this bill? It's called WIHOP, right? WIHOP. When I first read it, it says the Wyoming Homestead Opportunity Program. My first thought was WHOP, WOP. I'm half Italian, so I went, wait a minute. Who's doing the... I'm half Italian, so don't get mad at me for saying that. But it's WIHOP, not WOP.
Yeah.
But that when introducing this, where's the fairness aspect? And as they're breaking down who's eligible for this, who gets cut out? I mean,
exactly.
Is it somebody that makes $50,000 a year? Sorry, you make is it $100,000?
It's another example of government picking winners and losers.
Yeah.
We're gonna reward this group and we're gonna exclude you.
Well,
and by the way, you that got excluded, you still have to pay your taxes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and there's another one, right? So you get this 10 acres. Well, I know a lot of people that own a lot less than 10 acres of property that pay a tremendous amount in property taxes. So I think there's way too many questions around here. Maybe the best that we could say is how you led this segment, John. Well, thank you for thinking about it. I mean, it's definitely been a conversation starter.
Maybe we should talk at some point about, well, let's come up with some other solutions, but just the fairness of this, David, who gets cut out, who's eligible and who isn't, and the reality, if we're trying to help people who don't have any money to afford property, where are they going to get the money to develop? I mean, there's such a list of restrictions involved too. And the opportunity for fraud, oh my God,
it's just
door
enormous.
Kicked wide open.
Well, I think that we pretty much beat this one to a pulp. Now, I didn't really get too far into my stack of stuff today, but I did save this piece for when you were sitting here, and it's a piece that I got off of I think it was off of the Blaze, but it's entitled "The Winning Message for the GOP: Order is Compassion." Now, there's a lot of stuff going on in Minnesota right now, riots and you name it. Now, the question is, how do conservatives, how do Republicans win in the upcoming election? Generally speaking, the party in power loses seats in the off-year election. It's almost I don't know if it's a political law, but it's pretty darn close. And here's what they say on the Blaze. Quote, "There is a lie quietly poisoning the country. It says that if Republicans win, someone else must lose, that prosperity is a zero-sum game. This order requires oppression. That freedom is chaos. That lie is why we are divided, and it is wrong. America has won before, not by redistributing what existed, but by creating more than anyone believed possible. When America creates, the middle class grows, the poor rise, and the future opens. Not because government hands it out, but because it gets out of the way, where it should, and stands firm where it must. If Republicans want to win, and if America is going to survive this moment, then the path forward is not rage, it's not revenge, it's not tribalism, it's competence, courage, and clarity. Start here. People don't feel poor because they're lazy. They feel poor because life has become artificially expensive. Housing costs more because we stopped building. Energy costs more because we strangled the supply. Healthcare costs more because we allow closed systems and cartel behavior. Education costs more because we replaced skill with bureaucracy and debt. So the winning message isn't tax cuts for the rich or government handouts for the rest. The winning message is this: we're going to make America affordable again. So a couple of questions here, John. Now, you're not, politics generally isn't your bailiwick. You're more of a sports guy.
I dabble.
You dabble.
Dabble in politics. That's about it.
All right.
But I do pay attention. I'm a news junkie, that's for sure.
Fair enough. So then you should be able to pull out a soapbox on this
Have
one.
an opinion?
Have an opinion.
God forbid.
All right. So everywhere we hear, oh, we're so divided. We've never been so divided. First question for you. Why is that, do you think?
Well, as someone who has people that I love, family and friends who are, left leaning, I don't have a whole lot of left wing nuts. There's off the cliff liberals, but I have friends, family that are Democrats, so I get to hear their perspectives sometimes, and so. Because I love them dearly, I don't just immediately start chastising them and trying to change their minds. And occasionally they do try to change mine, but they give up very quickly. I think my opinion is, as a person of 45 years in media, that is the biggest problem. At one time, I used to defend media because when I was producing KOA's radio show, our news, our goal, and at one time KOA's news team was the biggest in Denver, bigger than the TV stations and the newspapers. Our goal every time was to get the story right.
Yes. Facts.
Facts and backing it up. I have a black book. I've kept that black book. I'll show it to you guys one of these days, of every official, every government agency, every politician, so on, and over, that was my day, was trying to get a story confirmed and trying to get another perspective. And if we had so-and-so on from the left, we needed to find somebody on the right.
Other side.
Well, that's not happening.
No.
And it is, folks, because I'm stunned at times, even talking to my loved ones and very good friends, who a lot of them are still in media in Denver, about what they know about a particular topic, and they, in some cases, have no idea what we're thinking and why we have our position. And they're stunned. They're like, well, geez, Bags, why do you do this? And why do you feel this way? And I say, well, this is the information I have. And then I'll show them my phone, and I'll show them my news sources. Again, we talked about it earlier, about getting the perspective from the other side, switching it over to CNN, or switching it over to, MS Now, or whatever they call it, et cetera, and just, grin and bear it, but listen to what they're saying. So at least you know what their perspective is, whether or not they know ours. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. And so my opinion is shows like this that understand that there is another opinion, and occasionally getting those people to come on, even if it gets a little argumentative, so that they too, and the folks that follow them, are hearing another perspective coming from you guys, and vice versa. That's my, I think it's the number one issue with all this tribalism that we have right now between conservatives and liberals.
And it is tribalism. I mean, it is. I know a lot of people that whatever Trump says goes. Well, last week I had Harriet Hageman on, and there's a big thing that, in my opinion, and I kind of really went off on a tirade on him, but it was the FCC going after liberal stations that don't have any conservatives on. Excuse me, what about the First Amendment? And so we have to get to a point where we can be critical of the things that we say and the things that we hear, because nobody is right all the time. And like you said, and I think it's an excellent point, that in media, you should strive to get things correct. And the opinion comes secondary. that you should get your facts right,
Yeah.
and then we can talk about it, not the reverse. And I think it too much of what you see in the media now is not news. It is opinion that is wrapped up as news and sold and packaged that way.
When we had Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow and Harry K. Smith, you guys remember those? They were the news, and so they were just the facts, ma'am. The Joe Friday reference.
Yeah.
You're too young. But
I'm
anyway,
not.
You're not. Just the facts, ma'am. We went to the news to get the information, and it wasn't opinion radio or opinion media. It was just information, and there were places to go. I mean, Rush Limbaugh's but was around for a long, long time if you wanted to get opinion. Now it is so intermixed, you can't tell at times if this is opinion or if this or a support of a rhetoric from one party or the other from just the facts.
Yeah.
And we have to get back to that. We have to be able to go somewhere to get just the information and then let us differentiate between the positions that we want to take on that particular issue.
We need an open range.
We need the open range record is what we need.
You got the Cowboy state politics. We could do that here.
And here's I've often believed this, that if you just reported the news, right, just what is happening, here's the facts, ma'am, who, what, where, when, why, how, that it would be perceived as conservative, only because there's nobody else doing it. And and I can tell you for a fact, John, that it is really easy to find people that will give you their opinion. It is really hard to find somebody that will write the facts.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a result of having, and I watch Fox News almost all the time, but in my mind, there is only one news program that they have, and it's their Brett Baer. The rest of it, all day long, it's nothing but opinion shows.
I would agree with that. That I do respect Brett Baer, and I think pretty much all of politic and media. That's why he ends up being, the host of the debates a lot of the time, the only conservative that they ever invite. Now, I would agree with you on that. I remember when the Democrats lost me in the late 90s during the Clinton administration, and then I first started, remember, that's at the time when I was producing news in Denver, when President Clinton, and it's the whole Monica Lewinsky era, I did not have sex with that woman. And the blatant lie. And at the same time, it was around the time I, found my faith and got baptized and so on and so forth. And I was watching the president of the United States lie like a rug, and it was so disappointed. It was indefensible. And then I watched George Stephanopoulos defend it.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was a shock because at that time I was defending media. I was saying, oh, no, we're not all in cahoots. We don't talk to each other. I don't call up Channel 9 or the Denver Post or Rocky Mountain News, remember them? And ask them, how are you covering this? No, we did it ourselves. We came up with a plan. We sent out the reporter, et cetera. And we didn't have we didn't take a position as the media. And then I watched as that effort to be unbiased just slowly dissolved. And then it was all one side or the other. Mm-hmm. And for me, it started with defending President Clinton at that time, and it's only gotten worse since then.
Well, and I think the solution to it is you have to find people that are interested in the news and interested in getting the facts correct. And I am one of those people that I get a charge out of when there's a story happening that I've got it right, that I've got the facts. I've talked to this person. I've dug up this document, and I've got it. And then you see a story that's published elsewhere. We won't mention any names, Okay, I do all the time. And you read it and you're like, no, that is not even anywhere close to what's happening. And often where you find it, I think, is in politics, and it's politics written from a certain perspective. Well, we've pretty much burned up another busy broadcast day on the program.
Jeepers, that went quick.
It went fast. It goes fast. I'd like to thank you, John, for sitting down with us.
Loved it.
Appreciate it.
Loved it.
You're welcome back anytime you like. If folks want to get a hold of you, how do they do that? Especially if they want to buy something.
Yeah, no doubt. I am with Century 21 BHJ here in Sheridan, Wyoming, licensed throughout the state of Wyoming. My
You owe me for that one, Bruce.
Yeah, you betcha. Bruce Garver, Rosemary, you guys are awesome. Great people. Love them. They take good care of us over there. And 307-278-9598 is my phone number, 307-278-9598. You can tell an old radio guy when he repeats the phone number automatically. So, and I can send you information or whatever if you have any questions about real estate. And if I don't know it, the answer, I know where to find the answer. So,
fair enough. Well, we've burned up another busy broadcast day on the program. We'll see you tomorrow from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio. I'm David Iverson.